Good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity to be heard today. I'm here because of how critical transit is to our region. That's why we cannot afford to keep deferring on transit budgets. The fact is, we are decades behind our peers, and the consequences are before you tonight. The City of Brampton and Waterloo Region have been investing heavily towards frequent and rapid transit for over a decade now, and they've been rewarded by breaking ridership records. These allow them to subsidize the levy. For example, Brampton's budget for this year proposes to add overnight service and over 100,000 service hours, funded purely by a fare increase. They do that because while lowering their net property tax levy by over $300,000. They can do this because their current levy is $91 million to the property taxes, thanks to a projected $125 million in revenue. Meanwhile, Niagara Region Transit's levy is 59.3, with revenues of $23.8 million. These systems put in the work and money in advance to earn millions of riders every month. We do not have that luxury today. If we had invested in the 2000s and 2010s, we might have ridership levels to subsidize taxpayers today. Instead, we enter year 2 with $24 and a bare bones network having fallen far behind other municipalities on transit, and it will only get more expensive to catch up. Consider the cost of deferrals already on the floor. $2.02 left out of the capital budget hurts the capital strategy. Exclude any assessment and revenue growth this next year. To catch up, we would need to increase the capital contribution from the current level by $6.2 million, which is equal to 10.4% of this proposed levy. A penny spent on anything else. I think it's clear that deferring will only inflate the percentage increase over time by artificially setting this year's budget lower than where it needs to be. Add in inflation and fuel, and are we not just pushing this snowball further down the hill? And just hoping it'll magically get better in coming years? It's unlikely. Add in the operating hours and service standards budget that the Triple Majority promised riders this year. How much would that cost? This year's budget does not say, but these 2 deferrals alone all but guarantee another contentious budget next year and fails to meet the Triple Majority timeline, and you want to cut further. We've got at least 33 buses, almost a fourth of our fleet, needing imminent replacement, while they take up over a third of our maintenance operating budget, according to NTC C8 2023. Staff has made clear we risk substantial repair costs or emergency service cuts if they are not replaced soon. Yet our plan is to be 12 short, up to 18 months from now, with basically nothing in the reserves to fall back on if things go wrong. This budget keeps the dance going another year, but a less risky solution would have been to take what works in other municipalities to reduce the reliance on the levy. And that, unfortunately, means increasing service to increase the attractiveness of transit in Niagara. Successful investments, like in Brampton and Waterloo, have proven that transit can be more self-sustaining and effective and keep the levy under control long-term. But to grow revenue and ridership, we need to provide better, frequent, and reliable service that is more competitive with car travel times. Advertising and students, while important sources of revenue, will not save us. And every year of delay will only make it that much more expensive to meet our current capital needs, not accounting for the capital we will need to grow. Think about what it would take for yourself or your family to take transit to get to work or run errands. Then compare it to the state of the system today. Consider my trip to be with you today. To get to regional headquarters from my house, it takes 16 minutes by car. By bus, if I travel a half hour with the most direct route available to me, I will still have not left Niagara Falls. It takes an hour to get here tonight, but the bus runs every 60 minutes. It's just passed at 4:31, sorry. I'd be late if I left an hour before this meeting. So I had to leave at my home at 2:30 today in order to be here on time. And I have to leave by 5:23 tonight. Otherwise, my trip home goes from 60 to 90 minutes because that direct bus will not operate past 6 p.m., forcing a longer trip. No wonder regional students are really the only people using our regional routes. I might be an outlier, but the local system is not much better. In Niagara Falls, trips requiring a transfer can be 30 to 60 minutes one way versus a 5 to 10 minute drive to Costco or Walmart from my home. And there's always a risk of a 30 to 60 minute wait, because if you miss a bus by 1 minute, you have to wait until the next one. Imagine standing outside in the cold or heat for 2 to 4 to 6 times the amount of time it would take to travel by car just to wait to start your journey. I might face that tonight myself if this meeting ends at the wrong time. With these travel times, who would want to take public transit? And what about that appeals to you? And that's precisely the problem that we need to seriously tackle if we're going to stop these increases to the levy, like some in this room desperately want to do. And I do not blame you for that. This is a challenging time. The economy is in flux and people are angry. Their concerns are not invalid. But reducing the usability of the system by cutting service, even flawed, as I've laid out, will not attract nor sustain non-student riders, hurting the taxpayer in the long term. There's other costs that cannot be fully accounted for, but transit does impact where members of Gen Z, like myself, will choose to live, work, and study. Routes will be reviewed in future years to fix some of these problems, but if this committee really wants to reduce future increases to the levy, you need to consider making this system more attractive to use, like our peer municipalities have. Raising fares without improving any of the fundamental issues this year is self-defeating. Before throwing blame on possible mistakes or misdirection from the roadshow tonight, please remember that it was the decision of local municipalities to halt bus purchases and other capital projects during COVID and the amalgamation proceedings. And they set the 2022 budget, not the NTC. Those budgets, given the increases, clearly do not fully account for the needs of the current system. And that does not account for the decades of underinvestment that our peers have been making instead. That is why this budget is necessary. We need to at least maintain the status quo, so we still have a system to grow in the future. That's why I think it is clear. The only motion currently before you in your report today that will not kick the can down the road would be to reverse the $2 million cut to capital and accept the full 11% increase to start building up reserves. I recognize that that is not likely to happen tonight. That's why I urge you to recognize the significant costs saved by this budget and borne by the riders, and to pass this budget without any further cuts or fare hikes. Break out of the cycle of underinvesting for the sake of keeping the loudest voices happy, and let budgets reflect where we need them to go. You already broke the triple majority commitment with this budget. Cut any further, and I believe strongly you'll be cutting into the bones of the system we need. It will be a privilege to answer any questions you might have. Regardless, I thank you for considering my remarks and staff for their hard work. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr.